biggest crowd we have had in quite a while, so thank you for coming out. Yeah, I appreciate it. You got a lot to live up to. Thank you for coming. Two requests. Number one, if you'll put your cell phones on silent, because this is being videotaped, and I'd hate for a phone to go off. And if you don't want your picture, I don't think they're going to get you back, so just get the speaker. So, and these will be on Facebook, on our Facebook page. So I'm glad to see you. I asked Daniel, I said, tell me something about yourself, and he goes, it's in my introduction. So I will turn it over to Daniel, and this is Daniel Shew. He and Monica, his wife, and his son are here. And won
sister, niece, and father, too.
Oh, cool. Wow. They won the Historic Preservation Award a few years ago in Bristol. So trying to save our Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon. I appreciate the invitation from the Smith County Historical Society to allow me to speak about this topic, which I'm so passionate about. I am excited to talk to you about local old houses and what we do and what I do, but first I had some exciting news I have to tell you. Earlier this week I was actually presented with the offer of purchasing some property in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. It's like, well, this is pretty cool stuff. I'm a big Egypt fan, but it all fell apart when I figured out that it was a pyramid scheme. So if y'all aren't going to throw me out now, I'll talk about some serious stuff. So I serve on the Bristol Historical Association, where I coordinate programs and also help on the Robert Preston House Committee, which is that large white house across the road from Target. That's what it's well known for being. Apparently, the story is that Lewis and Clark, or one of them, stayed there, so it's pretty interesting house. I also serve on the Bristol, Virginia Board of Zoning Appeals, the Preservation Award Committee for the City of Bristol. I was off the committee when I won the award, don't worry. And I chair the Bristol, Virginia Planning Commission. But I also work as a real estate agent with Prestige Homes of the Tri-Cities. And in my job, I specialize in marketing historic buildings for sale and taking those buildings to the closing table. I am the old house agent. Yes, believe it or not, I have searched the internet over and over and have found that I may be the only agent in the whole country that specializes in old houses and marketing them. I meet some wonderful people, and I have been in some of the most beautiful houses around the region so far. Every day I'm always learning more about construction, preservation, and market value. These buildings that I help with are old and usually represent a certain period, but the real estate market never stays the same. It's ever changing and requires constant research and understanding. I work very hard to bring those two worlds together to give my old house clients the best experience they can have. I love my job and enjoy all that I do. I'm passionate about my community through preservation, and I, along with my wife, am willing to personally invest in such an idea, which brings me to my passion. I would like to talk to you about the business that my wife and I have and how it changed the face of downtown residents in Bristol, in hopes of inspiring you to follow along in these efforts and improve your community as well. Shew Property Holdings, LLC, has taken on the responsibility of saving as many historic houses in Bristol, Virginia as possible. And I suppose I should back up a bit in case you're wondering why this 30-something male that should be enjoying video games and binge watching the latest Netflix series in his spare time is using his time to take on such a monumental task to better the community. Well, it started with my upbringing. I grew up on the fringes of Saltville and Meadowview. This holler boy didn't have a bathroom until he was 7 years old. Yes, I remember my sweet mama potty training me in an outhouse, and I remember her speaking so softly through the door, "Don't fall in." My mother, Norma Shew, which is that beauty in the middle, she was normally Fry from Saltville. She said there were 3 kinds of people in Saltville. There were Frys, people married to Frys, and people that wanted to be Frys. And from what we can find, our line of Frys were from an area near Salem, Massachusetts. It appears they may have lived around Saltville since the early 1800s. My father, Danny Shew, which is there and there, he said don't make him stand up, is from Glade Spring. The Shews moved there from North Carolina, we think around 1870, and were apparently descendants of Pennsylvania Dutch, likely Moravians from the Winston-Salem area. They loved antiques and old houses. I remember so much about growing up, and Dad was always refinishing a piece of furniture or working on the house. When they were around 40, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, they acquired their first house, a burned out ruin of a 1920s bungalow ravaged by fire a few months earlier. That house in Hankel Hollow was where I was raised, along with my siblings. They taught me to respect history and to save whatever I could. Many times I saw a tear in Mom's eye as she saw yet another house fall to the ground, torn down because of owner neglect, and that owner neglect had left them with no other option but to be raised for the sake of safety. Monica and I had similar childhoods. Well, they were similar in that her parents loved old things and didn't believe in waste. In Mouth of Wilson, Virginia, the daughter of Dr. Howard and Sandra Halsey, she had things like running water when she was 6, and solid floorboards. Don't put your foot through the floorboard. But our parents were both good people and taught us many things like trades, skills, and money management that would remain with us for the rest of our lives. We have combined our upbringings and life lessons to be where we are today. Now, how we do historic preservation and what exactly do we do? The short answer with regards to what we do is that we are landlords. Investing in our neighborhoods and building our retirement. The long answer is that we look at historic preservation subjectively, case by case. Some houses are intact enough and contribute to the historic overlay in such a way that kid gloves must be used to meticulously restore and preserve and document every little detail to ensure that we help the property's historic integrity without changing it, or making it into something that it is not. Some houses are buildings are so far gone that more modern materials such as vinyl siding and other elements might be used in its reuse to carry that building on into the next century. Truly, our mission is not only historic preservation, but a family-friendly, attractive, safe community. Our mission is to help create a city that we can take our 5-year-old around town safely and enjoyably. And we are doing this house by house and street by street. These are some examples of our work and what it took to get them livable again. This house at 1021 Lawrence Avenue in Bristol, Virginia, and Bristol, Virginia is where we mainly work right now. because Tennessee's kind of got it going on. They've got a lot of great things happening, especially residential neighborhoods. And Bristol, Virginia is not struggling so much anymore, but we really had a blight problem. So right now we're focused on there, but today we drove by a house and said, we may be doing something in Tennessee soon. So this house is at 1021 Lawrence Avenue. When we purchased the house next door to it in 2015, there was a very kind old lady that lived there. She had been a tenant in this house for 30 years. Her children had helped her in acquiring the house, and she was a homeowner just 3 months before she passed away. The children approached us about purchasing the property, and we started out our renovation adventure. Apparently, her landlord had let her live in the most severe termite infestation our home inspector had ever seen. There were thousands of dead roaches all over the house, paper towels stuffed in cracks, and 2 layers of carpeting that kept her sweet little feet from falling through the floor. On October 20th, 2016 is when we closed on this house. Monica was at work, and after I came in to view the property after the closing, I knelt on the floor and I absolutely wept. I didn't know her that well, but she was a human being. She had rights, and she did not deserve to live in such conditions while paying someone rent. I pulled myself together and we started work, doing almost everything ourselves. In just a year, we had completely transformed this building that some would have torn down into a beautiful, safe home ready for some new life. There it is today. Right. I'm going to take some questions on each house if you do have any. We've got about 6 or 7 houses, so does anybody have any questions about this renovation?
Scroll back to before you started working in this that room. Okay, tell us what we're looking at.
So this was, actually her kitchen was really split up. We're not sure what this room was. It was a porch addition. And she had all that you see there, and then she had a refrigerator and dining area in here. So the kitchen was 2 different rooms, and we turned that into a master bath, which was right off from the large bedroom, and put that back into a kitchen. As a matter of fact, there was a corner right here that you can't see. And we don't hire a home inspector. We have a guy that we talk to, and so if it's something where we're really scratching our head, we'll call him and have him come over. And one day I was taking a piece of 4x4 off of the wall, and as I pried it off, the 4x4 started to bend like that, and I thought, well, something's wrong here. So I called him and I said, before I go any further, I want you to come over here and check this out. So he came over and we looked at it together and figured out that 4x4 was holding up the center section of the roof. 1x4, sorry. So we gently supported it, redid that, and that was, they had apparently taken the original kitchen wall out and extended it. And then this was the living room area, so Monica has put them in order, and that was the master bedroom. The kitchen had 2 layers of carpet, like I mentioned, and I said, we should be able to save this floor.
I will note the picture with the washer and dryer in it. The washer and dryer being held up by 2 layers of carpet.
So when we took
Took them out, took up the carpets.
There was nothing.
Monica said, there's something wrong with this floor, bad. Because our original budget for this was $10,000, and we ended up spending $45,000. So we pulled the carpet back, and my leg went through the floor. That was the first time. And I think I stepped on 5 nails in that house. I finally got my tetanus shot. So that's in order there. That was the old kitchen you could see, and this is the dining area. The master bedroom. That's the original front door we put on a slide. We don't always use, modern, trendy things, but we did want to reuse the front door, and it had been kicked in and broken. And then this is the living room area. Any other questions?
What year was that house built?
1922. That's our youngest.
1922.
Yes. And the one we own beside it is identical. They were. I felt like I was back in Saltville. The houses both looked alike. All right, you can move on to Spencer. Woo! So this is our latest project, and the reason I drink. 416 Spencer Street. This house is one of 4 properties we own on Spencer Street, where we have changed capital everything about this block. We bought it for a whopping $25,000 in a condemned state, freshly removed tenants, had left behind roaches, large sewer rats, 200 that we counted, fleas that were in the neighboring yards, and even bed bugs. Yet another example of an absent landlord. In this case, it was a rent-to-own situation, collecting a check each month and providing no upkeep for the property. I think in his defense, he was not very aware of what was going on until it was too late, till the city kicked everybody out of it. It was built in the early 1900s. The city record says 1901. I tend to think it's more like 1918. The outside had been considerably changed through the years, yet the interior woodwork made of all white oak was astonishingly intact. Dirty, but intact. This is an example of a renovation versus a restoration. The windows, well, we couldn't save the original windows because they weren't there anymore. These people were living without windows. They would go and sleep in the back of their truck at night. They were replaced with vinyl ones. The house needed a well-deserved facelift. So we opted to paint the brick to freshen it up. Solar Hill Construction, which is also a family member of ours, poured a new footer in part of the house. They jacked up some rooms, I believe 6 inches, and they supported and unfortunately had to drop several ceilings for that reason. They replaced crumbling plaster with drywall, insulated and supported floors, and sagging ceilings. The entire plumbing, electric, and HVAC were replaced. Well, the HVAC wasn't replaced, there wasn't any. The house that others told us not to pay $25,000 for is now valued at around $300,000. Do you have any questions about this crazy place? And people wait on our properties around Bristol too. We had this house rented 3 months before it was even ready. But that's some of the white oak. It had this beautiful side lights on this interior door going into the living room. The French doors have been gone a long time. And I didn't do a lot of work on this house, but I did refinish that wood with hand sanding. 106, 207 counting the roof, windows, and purchase price. So, but we're also treating this, I don't go over this very much, but as our retirement also. So it'll take us 7 years to recover that. And then after that, the unfortunate part for tenants is rent keeps going up every year. So it's only going to be worth more. And once in a while, we're nice enough if somebody comes to us and says, I would like to buy the house I'm renting. It depends on the situation, but we have sold them before. Any other questions?
What time frame did it take you to get this one up?
It was 2.5 years total, but we put the roof on, the windows on, and painted it we have a homeless situation downtown. And so in order to keep them from breaking in, we had to make it look lived in, that's what we do immediately. We fix the front and then go in, which is kind of the opposite of what other people do. But when we really got serious about the interior, everything that happened inside started in late November, and we just finished up last week.
Y'all are doing a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. We're pretty proud of that house. I thought it was going to give me a brain hemorrhage, but when we came in there after everything was painted and I looked around, it was pretty satisfying on that one, because this was the most major. I'll show you the one we're moving into, but if you take the scale out, this is the biggest one we've ever done. So next, please. So this property is located at 411 Spencer Street, and the fourth property we own on that street is a double lot that is across the road from this house. That gorgeous Greek revival with the columns, that's the only house on the street we do not own, and that was restored by Dr. Tom Mitteray. I was actually his real estate agent, and he did an exquisite job in keeping with the Department of Interior Restoration, and just did, phenomenal work. So this property, it will be, there's no after this. It will be completed, hopefully, by the summer of 2024. This house was known by neighbors as Roach City. Yeah, it was so bad it had a name, or the drug house. It had been converted into apartments in 1901. So a lot of original things in this house. The only thing we have in there is a few door facings and a fireplace mantle. We estimated that over 20 people had been residing in this house in third world conditions before we went under contract. Just the act of buying this property changed the street. Removing the tenants, which we actually did not do, the previous landlord did, from these deplorable conditions changed the dynamics of the whole block. Traffic was dramatically decreased. We were told by many neighbors that had their houses already restored. And sound pollution as well as street pollution was dramatically decreased. Well, it completely ceased, frankly. We believe this house was built around 1880, and it was once an elegant Italianate home with 6-foot arched windows. We have one original window, and lovely brackets along the gables. We plan to restore the facade to its original appearance and provide 4 one-bedroom units to young professionals moving into the area. So to make this house work, unless we were multi-billionaires and we could just restore it and say, okay, here's somebody live here or purchase it from us. In order to make this work, we took a leaf out of Charleston, South Carolina's book, which they are taking large old downtown houses, and they're actually allowing some of them in certain areas to be converted gently. They still adhere to some restoration restrictions, but we live in a different time, and these big houses aren't as popular as they once were. So we're keeping it 4 units as it is, and instead of having 7 exterior entrances, there will be 2 back doors. All the back porches will be taken off, and the 2 front doors will be combined into 1 front door as it originally looked. So when you drive by, it will have a Victorian appearance, like a house, except there will be 4 to 8 people living there. And multifamily housing is drastically needed in Bristol, Virginia. We have learned that we have people working in Bristol that are living in Kingsport because we don't have housing. That's another reason we purchased those 2 lots, was to try to create more housing that was cohesive with the neighborhood. Any questions about this one?
Yes, do you have to go through a lot of historical, legal matters when you that old?
That's a great question. So, and I'll back up and maybe tell you stuff you don't care about. Bristol City, it's not like Abingdon where they have designated historical districts where they can, tell you what kind of roof and things to put on. I don't think we'll ever be there. I don't know if we want to be there. But we have historic overlays. As a matter of fact, Bristol, Virginia has 5 historic overlay districts. All of our properties are in one of them. And so the house before this one, we even had to have a bead of caulk around the bottom of the toilet before the occupancy certificate was given to us. So because it was condemned, so the city had to be there through everything, and they were good to work with, but of course they were strict about things. This one's not so much. We'll have to have a general permit on it. It's kind of the opposite. We want to defy the city by doing historic things. So one thing I have to talk to them about is some kind of leeway on the porch railing of this house, because this porch railing would have been around 25 inches, and they want us to have 34. So there's some things like that we have to talk to them about once in a while. They're very happy with what we're doing. I won't say they make it easy on us, but they know what we're doing, and we all want the same thing. So a code enforcement officer referred to us on WCYB as star landlords. Okay, I'll take that. So, but we don't work with tax credits or anything right now. We're getting into that with, we're in the process of buying a school that we're converting into loft apartments. And that will be something that we're talking with an architect about with historic tax credits. So the outside will have to, you're too late, Neil. The outside will have to adhere to their standards, some interior places, but from our understanding, each apartment can be pretty modern because there's not much left of the school inside. So yeah, it's as easy or as simple as we want it to be, I guess.
So none of these properties were kind of formally designated as historic properties?
No. We can, where they are in historic overlays, there's this whole plan, which I don't even know everything about, that the city had presented, I guess, to the Department of Interior. And so they do have these districts, and this one is in one. As a matter of fact, it's on the edge of a commercial district, but it is in one where we could get some help. Does that answer your questions? A lot of it, sorry. Anything else? Now we're getting really pretty. So this structure is also, this structure is Pleasant Hill and is the former home of historian Bud Phillips. Built in 1872, this brick Greek revival was fairly intact and ripe for a detailed restoration. Any cracked window panes were replaced with 100-year-old glass, and I enjoyed scaring our handyman. I would catch him not doing something, and in order to get the glass out of the window, well, if you try to be careful, you're going to break it anyway because it's stuck in there with glazing. So I always take a broom handle and just run it through the window and scare him to death. So we replaced those with 120-year-old glass. The 1930s front door, which is the French door, was changed back to an 1870s style door with a porcelain doorknob. They had also changed the side lights and transom lights. So, and I talk about our full-time guy, Mike DiPaolo, in a few minutes, so I'll go ahead and tell you his name. As confused as he was about me saying, please cover up 2 windows, he did it anyway and then understood. We were patterning this door after Field's Pen House in Abingdon, which I thought was the same architect, but it wasn't. A very similar structure, so I got the door from my other sister, which I think I had given it to her, which is a funny story. And we went by Field's Pen to see their white porcelain doorknob, and and do all that. So the lady we bought the house from is a wonderful person. She said she wouldn't have sold it to anybody else. She was very confused as to why we were taking out the French door, but when she saw it when we were finished, she understood. Any missing trim inside was replaced by our craftsman, Mike. Paint colors were carefully chosen, and an HVAC furnished with period antiques and decor. Guests visiting Bristol can feel as though they have stepped back in time to 1872 while having all the modern conveniences of today. I always wanted to own a house museum, so this was the closest thing I could get to it. And Monica and I have put blood, sweat, and tears into this house, and we absolutely love the way it turned out. This room right here is said to have been host to Jefferson Davis in 1873, although we cannot find a written record of that. And this is the formal parlor down here with the red sofa, and then that's the famous bedroom where the original builder's wife turned to him one night, walked up the steps, and said, "It is a good night here and a good morning in heaven," and she never woke up. And then this is the back downstairs bedroom, which was Bud Phillips's bedroom. We've done period kerosene lights wherever we could. Some of them are newer, but have the appearance. Anything about this place? So we're not done with the King house, and we sold our house. So yeah, we are living there right now. We were kind of homeless there for a minute, and it's done very well. We're very pleased with the heat and air system, and it's a very comfortable place to be in for sure. So we're trying to get out of there in 2 months. Then you can rent it one night.
Where is Pleasant Hill?
It's on Solar Hill, Johnson Street. Solar Hill consists of 3 parallel streets: Solar Street, Johnson Street, and Oak Street, and then all the streets in between. And Solar Hill, when I get to the King house, I don't talk about this really, but Solar Hill was the 4-acre yard for the King house when it went from a 2,000-acre plantation down to a town property. And then there was a gentleman from Chicago, I believe, that purchased most of the hill and subdivided the lots out and made a Victorian subdivision. As a matter of fact, there's some argument this was either the first or second house built on Solar Hill in that purchase. Any other questions? Hope I'm doing okay on time. The old double house was an unusual project for us. Whoopsie. It was constructed around 1875 as a boarding house for law students studying under Captain James H. Wood, the owner of Pleasant Hill. So this is across the road and one house down. It was turned into a duplex, we think, around 1885. Bristol had quite a few duplexes in the late 1800s, actually. I didn't know that was a thing. And has remained a duplex ever since. Previous owners had changed the windows out with vinyl ones and vinyl sided it. That siding was used to cover the original wood, and they have expressed to me that they basically kept the house from collapsing. So whatever they did, I'm grateful for. With all this done, it would have been a bad investment for us to change it all back to wood siding and wood windows, since there was nothing wrong with what they did. We decided to work with some exterior details and colors to help the exterior blend in with neighboring properties on Solar Hill, and we still use it as a duplex today. We did some things to the interior of this house because it had been so altered over the years. A lot of preservationists, Derek probably knows plenty about this opinion, that you shouldn't expose brick because that wasn't done inside houses and things like that. But this house was different. I actually found that cast iron mantle behind the wall. The marble top was gone, and I mean, the house had just had so much done to it. We wanted to appeal to a younger crowd and make it something that was a little modern in a sense. Any questions about the double house? Yes?
One thing that, one big project that we did on this house was there was a gaping hole in the limestone foundation. So we had a local mason repair that.
From here to here.
Oh, my
Yeah, it's kind of floating.
garage.
Hurt the heat bill a little. You have another question? I guess slide on. The King Mitchell House was built in 1814 and is at, I believe, the very top of Solar Hill. So it's technically the first house. It's also technically the first house in Bristol. It was the main house for the vast King family plantation and ironworks that existed here long before Bristol City. Andrew Jackson was a frequent guest at the King House, along with other distinguished guests such as Andrew Johnson, who attended a wedding there, and Robert E. Lee, who had dinner there. Reverend James King was the third largest slaveholder in Washington County and was the owner of the King Ironworks. As a matter of fact, I believe it was called the Beaver Creek Ironworks. That was responsible for making salt kettles for Saltville and many other andirons and such things for homes all over the area. They used the river along with William King of Abingdon to ship their products to a small port in Tennessee that later became a town called Kingsport. The home was renovated in 1880, which we don't have those. It was renovated in 1880. They changed the front door. That was the front door in 1880. Adding a large wing by the well-known Lancaster family, who was a family of hotel owners. In 1893, the McCoy family added 4 large rooms, making the Italianate facade you see today, which was Rory's bedroom and the music room and the hallway and our master bath. I've been told that was, you're welcome. I've been told that was the first bathroom in Bristol. Then a millionaire of the time, J.D. Mitchell, purchased the home in 1899 and added the back wing on where our kitchen and servant's bedroom is. His daughter lived in the house for 100 years. Essentially, the structure is 4 completely different periods existing at once. This home is currently under restoration, and when finished in a few months, will be our home. The exterior is 90% done, restored, and the interior is well on its way. It was left King College in 2004 and had been preserved by the college with all original furniture from the Mitchell family, including a baby grand piano and early 19th century pieces from Gate City, original wallpapers, and even curtains from the Mitchell family. It was transferred to us in its entirety. They said they wanted the pie safe in the kitchen, but they never came back to get it. You can scroll back down if you want to there. And so this was our front door restoration. The doors actually made the Bristol Herald Courier. They were really worn, and King University had boarded them up with a piece of plywood. So we had a local craftsman take the original doors. He couldn't save them, so he took the panels, the molding, the glass, the doorknobs, and the door knocker, and replicated 3-inch thick, 8-foot tall, 250-pound each double doors. The glass in the transom's also original. It was barely there, but it was there. And then
3-inch thick.
Yeah. Yeah, they're huge. What was beautiful was they're so heavy that the new hinges creaked from day one. I was like, yes, got that. And then the front porch we thought was okay. It was originally built with a flat roof, and it was not a real good design, frankly. And then the porch had settled, so all the water would go back toward the house. So we started jacking it up and realized that that wasn't what we were going to be able to do, so we had a hip put on it. The contractor at the time, he stood back and looked at it and he said, "Oh, it looks good." He said, "That's the most invisible $10,000 I've ever seen." So, but that is good because you can't see it from the road and it's black shingles, so it looks like nothing's been done. And then we love Charleston, South Carolina, so we added one little thing to the house, which was that Charleston porch ceiling. And then the sidewalk was laid with 120-year-old bricks from chimneys that were taken down on another house that we purchased before we bought it. So the bricks were in the backyard. And then we like to make our projects be like 100-year fix and not temporary. So we opted to take the wood out of the porches and pour concrete and do stone tiles so that water would, never be able to hurt these floors again. Any questions about the King House?
And how soon do you think you'll be moving in?
We keep getting set back a little bit, mainly because of that house on Spencer Street, but we're trying to get in there by August 1st, and then we'll finish up the restoration over the next 6 months.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And so is that original brick that we see now?
Yes. You're seeing 1880 brick and 1893 brick. The 1814 part of the house is on the left side in the middle, so they built on the front side and back. The only original 1814 brick you can see is in the backyard. There's 2 windows that are exposed. And actually, that's an interesting subject too, because J.D. Mitchell, he didn't like how all the brick didn't match up. So he had some kind of mineral-based paint made, because they owned Mitchell Powers Hardware, so he had access to things from all over the world. And they painted the house red.
I wonder, I was trying to think how it could all be the same.
Yeah.
color.
You said the house was first started in 1814. Did they have any historical information in terms of during the Civil War that there was any?
Oh yeah, we know. I don't think there's something about this house that we don't know. As a matter of fact, Rory goes to Sullins Academy in Abingdon, and during the Civil War, the Kings had moved downtown. They built a new house in the new town in 1856, I believe. So the house was empty for a while. It's really cool because it's always been called the King House. I found a map from 1860, and it says the old King House. And during the Civil War, the Lancasters, I think they owned it during the Civil War. I think they had already purchased it. And so they leased it to some people that started Sullins Academy in one of the rooms. And then they built a school in the side yard, and then they built the big Sullins Academy that's now gone. And but we have found a Civil War bullet in the yard. There may be a few things we don't know. Yeah, lucky it survived Stoneman's raid.
I was going to say, at least the house was not burned or anything during the time.
Yeah, really. Apparently everything in Bristol was burned. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sorry.
Since this house is so old, is it like 3 brick thick or 1?
Yes, it's at least 3 in most rooms. I think maybe 4 in some of the first floor areas.
Why did they do that?
I think they must have had to. That was just, they're basically, coming out of the Middle Ages there where it was solid stone walls and then solid brick walls, and sometimes interior walls were wood, but, they had to be sturdy, well-made, and it may have even been cheaper, if they were digging the clay in their own property. Now, the left side of the house is a brick veneer because that's 1893, so we have stud walls where we can actually run wiring. into them.
One comment. I probably heard it or saw it on TV, you know, we can rely on that, but the colored roof on your porch, you said you were painting the ceiling.
Yeah,
The ceiling. And everybody thinks that comes from Charleston, but it has more history than just Charleston. They used to use it to, the paint colors, to keep away evil spirits. So hopefully your house
Hank
will
paint.
keep away evil spirits.
Yeah, when people ask us if it's haunted, our comment is always, no. Pleasant Hill, on the other hand, you might have an experience at. So these are just a few projects we have either done or been involved in. I think I've been the agent for or somehow been involved in around 30 restorations in Bristol, which is a lot of houses. Preserving these buildings is important for many reasons, and that's my newest listing. I guess y'all saw in the paper today. It teaches us about craftsmanship from another time, which can help us understand what worked and can be information that can improve our future building practices and techniques. It helps retain a tangible connection to the past. Once these buildings are gone, they cannot be brought back. It's final. We and our friends, through restoration efforts, have increased the city's tax revenue, made safer neighborhoods, and I'm sometimes challenged by that statement, and I'm saying, safer as in when you're walking down the sidewalk, the house isn't going to fall on top of you. And raised property value for anyone around those houses, all while reusing, recycling, and reducing waste. So I had quite a few preservation quotes, but I'm over-talking. One of my favorites is from a gentleman named Craig Potts. He's the executive director of the Kentucky Heritage Council and State Historic Preservation. And he says, historic preservation clearly does much more than preserve bricks and mortar. It recognizes that our built history connects us in tangible ways with our past and provides context for the places we occupy and the world we live in, and that's especially true to us in Appalachia. It fuses art with craftsmanship, capacity for modern utility with embodied energy, and progressive ideas for economic revitalization with traditional authenticity. Historic preservation is at the same time wonderfully egalitarian. All socioeconomic classes in every corner of the nation have successfully utilized its principles to protect their heritage and revitalize their communities. And I have, if you would like it, I do have a copy that I can write it down where to get it. I didn't give it to Monica in time to put it in here. It's Sustainability and Historic Preservation Executive Summary in 2011 from the Washington State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, which talks about why you should not replace your windows and all kinds of cool stuff like that. So I hope I have shown some light on preservation and why it is important. And I hope you can walk away with the same passion I and others have for making sure the buildings from our past are not turned to dust. Don't leave preservation just in the hands of towns, committees, or groups, but use what you can where you are to make a difference. Thank you. I'll be glad to take any extra questions.
Yes. Where did you get 100-year-old flats?
Well, I'm kind of like Sanford and Son, so if I drive by and somebody's either tearing a house down or replacing something, I go, can I have that, please? There was one house that a friend of mine purchased. We actually said it should be torn down, and he did fix it. It's incredible. And he took out his windows. They were mostly bad, and he knew in his price range that he needed to, connect with people that wanted vinyl windows. So I got all those and stored them. And the hottest experience I've ever had was on Facebook Marketplace. There was a gentleman selling a staircase out of a house, and I was looking through the pictures going, oh, there's like molding in that house. So I contacted him, went over there, and I said, can I buy this molding? And he said, if you'll get it out of here by tomorrow, you can have it. So this was August 20th. I was there in nothing but a pair of shorts and shoes, ripping this molding out and loading it in the truck. So yeah, I scavenge.
What's the most fun thing you found as you go through all these old houses?
Oof. Yeah, the attic at the King house, when we first toured it, I mean, we've discovered, we've found that 200-year-old fireplaces were reduced in size and made into 100-year-old fireplaces, and found things in the yard. It's always cool, but Monica's right. When we first toured the King house with King University, the original 1814 staircase was a winding staircase that went all the way to the attic. And so, but they took out the bottom and made this huge library. So when we got to the second floor, we were like, what's this staircase go to? So we went up to the attic, and it was once a slave room, but it was full of trunks. And there were deeds from Gate City from the Civil War era. There was flapper clothing. There was a 1923 Princeton banner, diplomas, medical equipment, dental molds. I mean, we were digging through that stuff. It was wild.
Were you able to get that as part of the sale?
Absolutely.
I bet that was cool.
Yeah, it was. We're still documenting that stuff. JD's wife, Louise, was a spiritualist. So we had 650 books that came with the house, and Monica was in there typing them in the computer, and I was in the library doing something, because at that point the books were in the parlor. And she said, I think you better come in here. What? And she said, look at this. And it was a book that was called Intercourse with Spirit, and it was a seance book from 1901.
That's a different concept.
Yeah, it was. And so we went from there going, whoa, there's like a bunch of seance books in here. I mean, I'd never seen any. I've been doing antiques since I was 12. I'd never run across one. So maybe that's the coolest thing, Annalie.
How about your looking at what you're trying to do in Saltville? What do you think your success is going to be with being able to make the sale or whether a back house come through? What's your projection?
I think that's such an interesting house historically, and it being surrounded by, according to CRS, 193 acres of town property. I didn't know there was that much there, and maybe it's wrong. But it's a perfect setting. It sits on an acre. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff going for it, and our price range is right. So, I mean, if it's under contract by this time next week, I'm not going to be surprised at all.
Good show. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a month. I'll worry after that. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Has anybody asked you to look at, or they looked at the house on 39, making 39?
Oh, the Crockett House?
Huh?
The Crockett House?
Yeah, probably.
No, I have not. I wish the owners of that would approach me to sell it. But no, I've never been in it or talked to anybody that owns it. I just know plenty about the controversy around it.
Have you seen the video of the inside of it?
I have. Actually, Monica said she wished she could go in today, and I said, you can. I'll show you tonight.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that's an incredible property.
How many projects do you have going at the same time?
Right now, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 right now, and some in the chamber, which it's reduced because last year I think we had 6 going at one time. We're not afraid of much. Sometimes we get in there and go, woo!
Ones you're actually working on yourself, not just trying to sell one to
Right.
someone.
Yeah. She and I are in the process of 4 right now.
You're a strong man.
Well, thank you. It helps to have a strong woman.
Yes, it does.
She's just as passionate. She's just a self-proclaimed introvert, so I'm the one up here.
Do you ever consult on whether a house should be torn down or
Actually, I didn't include that, but yeah, I am the, let me remember my title. I am the consultant that in the 5 historic districts or historic overlays in Bristol, if a property is condemned, the city, let's see, I think their process is the city asks the state if it's a contributing structure. And if the state says, yes, it is, then the city refers back to the Historical Association, and I'm the association's consultant. And there is a general rule on that I believe the restoration shouldn't exceed more than double or triple the purchase price or something. And the last house we tore down, I saw some flack in the community, and even some people were like, can you believe they did this? And I said, yeah, I did it. It was, I think, it was valued at $15,000. I mean, it was once a beautiful house, but the restoration would have been $300,000. It was really bad.
What's the problem with Rocket House?
Without going in, I don't know. I mean, it looks perfectly salvageable to me.
Who, you say the state? Are you the state?
No, I'm with the Historical Association.
Right, but the state must have some consultants that are in your line.
No, I'm not with the state right now.
But does a guy come down from the state?
I think maybe code enforcement or zoning may send photos.
Oh, so just,
Yeah, I don't think anybody comes down. If they did, they could talk to me directly and clear this right up. But I'm never one to want to see a property go if I say, yeah, it should go. But I also put restrictions. When I talked to the building inspector about tearing it down, I told him, they should save the wall because there was a beautiful stone wall. And Lord knows in Bristol, it seems like a wall falls every day. So we're losing them by the day. And up until now, they would get scooped up and I guess taken to the landfill when they fell. So they did save that. And now it's a flat lot ready to be built on again.
Marion's going through, tearing down a lot of white. It looks like they're just tearing down houses and selling lots.
That happened in Bristol about 8 years ago probably, and some of the people behind it have now said maybe we shouldn't have done that, but I think it really had to be done. I mean, they tore down like a whole block on Russell Street. Like one of them was a mansion, but I know when we first came here it was a really rough property, so I would never hope that that's done, but sometimes it is one way to solve an issue. Or, I mean, we've had several houses given to us. If the city could somehow transfer that to someone who would fix it, that could be a cool option too. It's hard to, people that aren't used to restoration, have never done it, or aren't passionate about it, it's hard to get them to understand A, the importance of it, and B, how simple it can be. Sometimes it costs more to tear it down than to fix it. So I'd be glad to email anybody you want me to. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I've watched what you and Monica have done now since I met you, and that has changed that area. So you have a lot of interaction with the Bristol city government. Were they supportive in the beginning, or did you have to show them this is what I can do?
Absolutely, but we did have 2 projects behind us already over on Lawrence. I remember I called city attorney and manager Randy Eads one day, and I said, Monica and I have got this crazy idea, and we don't have any money either, so bear with us. And he said, well, I'll have lunch with you. And, had a good long talk with him about why properties were torn down and what this process is. And that helped me to understand it, and they've been very supportive. Whoever the mayor is at the time is always, telling us how important this is and trying to help us any way possible.
It's almost as if you've bridged that gap between homeowner and you try to do good for that community and put it into the government so that you work together.
Yeah, and I don't know, Monica says I'm good at that, but I don't know if there should ever be a gap in anything. Bristol City gets a lot of flack about a lot of things, but if you show up to a meeting or email someone or have lunch with them, that gap is already beginning to be bridged there. I think it's important to get along with your city leaders. That's a really good point. Yes, Rory. Did I see a hand back here?
I just want to ask you about, you mentioned at the Spencer Street property that you painted the brick. I've been told many times, never paint brick, when we own a brick house. And every time I say to my husband, well, maybe we could paint it, he says, no, you never paint brick. Obviously, you feel differently. What are the pros and cons?
Well, I would never paint a brick house that's from 1750. 1920 is a little different. Of course, in 100 years, that's going to be a really old house. But that Spencer Street house, the brick, 1920s brick can be, it's mediocrity sometimes. So it wasn't great. It hadn't aged well. It needed a lot of repairs and stuff. I've been told by engineers that it can create a moisture problem, which I haven't seen on any brick that we've painted, and then I've been told by contractors that's a fallacy. So I don't know what the truth is, but for us it's aesthetic. But yeah, on a property that has never been painted that predates 1920, I would not do that too. And also, that house looked exactly like the house next door to it, so I was like, I don't want them to look like twins anymore. Anything else? Well, I certainly appreciate y'all being receptive to what we do. I feel sometimes like I brag a little bit, but I'm trying to draw attention to the fact that if we can do it, other people can, and you don't have to be a millionaire, you just have to care. Annalie, do you want to come back up here for anything?
No, but I'd just like to thank you. That was amazing. And if y'all have questions, you can grab Daniel after we dismiss here. And next month, keep on Facebook. I keep posting it over and over. I think Betsy White will be here from the museum in Athens. So thank you very much.
Thank you.